The contract had become irrelevant. Not because it expired, not because it was destroyed, but because neither of them mentioned it anymore. Before the obsession, there was a contract. See how it all began in part 1, link below. Helen noticed the change first. Sang-Young Park was still controlled, still composed, still impossibly sharp in the boardroom. But at home, in the quiet of their high-rise apartment overlooking the Han River, something subtle had shifted. He waited for her, not out of obligation, not out of performance. He waited because he wanted to eat dinner with her. One evening, Helen stepped out of the elevator into their private foyer, tired from work. She expected silence. Instead, she found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, tie removed, reading something on his tablet while the house staff finished plating dinner. He looked up when he heard her heels. "You're late?" he said calmly, not accusing, just observing. She raised a brow. "You noticed?" "I notice everything." But his eyes softened slightly. That softness unsettled her more than his coldness ever had. At the company, whispers had begun, not about the contract, about her. "She's attending strategic meetings now. The chairman favors her. CEO Park actually listens when she speaks." Helen wasn't decorative. She was intelligent, direct, strategic. And Sang-Young had started inviting her opinions privately, not because he had to, because he valued them. One afternoon in his office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Seoul's skyline, she stood beside his desk, reviewing a proposal. "This acquisition is too aggressive," she said calmly. "You'll win, but you'll destabilize the smaller firms. That will create resentment." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Resentment is manageable. Not when it becomes coordinated." Silence. Then slowly, "You're suggesting restraint?" "I'm suggesting long-term power." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval. He adjusted the proposal that evening. Not because she was his wife, because she was right. But with power comes enemies. Across the city, in another glass tower, someone watched. Director Kim. A rival executive who had lost a major deal to Sang-Young months ago. He had been investigating quietly, digging, waiting. He didn't care about romance. He cared about weakness. And to him, marriage was leverage. Back home that night, Helen stood on the balcony, city lights shimmering below. Sang-Young joined her silently. "You're thinking," he said. "I'm adjusting," she corrected. "To what?" "To being seen." He understood. "You are not an accessory." "I know that," she replied. "But does everyone else?" He stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that she felt his presence fully. "If anyone underestimates you," he said quietly, "that will be their mistake." She turned slightly toward him. "And if someone underestimates us?" His jaw tightened subtly. "Then they will regret it." For the first time, there was no contract between them, no transaction, just two powerful individuals beginning to move as one. They didn't know it yet, but someone was already preparing to tear that unity apart. Peace never announces when it is about to be disturbed. It simply shifts. The first sign was small, too small to alarm anyone, too deliberate to be accidental. Helen was in the executive lounge after a strategy briefing, reviewing documents on her tablet. A few senior managers stood nearby, speaking in low tones. When she approached the coffee machine, their conversation dipped, then resumed. Well, she integrated quickly. Of course she did. A pause. She had incentive. Helen didn't look up. She stirred her coffee once. Twice. Calm. Always calm. But she had learned something important about rooms filled with powerful men. Silence is louder than accusation. She walked past them with composed grace. If they wanted to test her endurance, they would discover it was steel. That afternoon, Sang-Young noticed a change. Not in the company, in her. She was quieter at dinner, measured. He set his chopsticks down. Something happened. It wasn't a question. Helen wiped her hands gently with a napkin. Executives are adjusting. To you? To the idea of me. His gaze sharpened. Be specific. She held his eyes evenly. They are wondering whether I am here because I am capable, or because I married you. The air between them cooled. Who said that? No one directly. His jaw flexed. That irritated him more than an open challenge would have. Cowardice disguised as speculation. You don't need to defend me, she added softly. His eyes lifted to hers. I am not defending you. A beat. I am evaluating risk. Helen almost smiled. Always business. But she had begun to understand his language. This was how he cared. Across town, Director Kim sat in his office reviewing a thin folder. Inside were discreetly gathered documents, timeline of Sang Young's engagement, rapid marriage, internal restructuring dates, Chairman Wan's visit. The timing was too precise. Kim tapped his finger once against the desk. A strategic marriage, he murmured. He didn't have proof, but suspicion was enough. All he needed was one confirmation. And people talk, especially when they feel overlooked. 2 nights later, Sang Young and Helen attended a private investor dinner. The venue was elegant. Dim chandeliers, soft string music, polished marble floors. Helen wore a deep emerald gown, structured yet understated. Sang Young stood beside her in a tailored charcoal suit. They were magnetic. Not because of displays of affection, because of control. Mid-conversation, a foreign investor laughed lightly. CEO Park, your wife is remarkably articulate. You chose well. Sang Young didn't hesitate. She chose me. Helen felt the room shift. It was subtle, but it was there. For the first time, he positioned her as an equal publicly, not an addition, a decision-maker. Her eyes met his briefly. He didn't look at her long, but the message was intentional. Later that night in the car, silence stretched between them. Then Helen spoke. You didn't have to say that. Yes, I did. She studied him carefully. Why? He looked out the window, city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. Because perception becomes reality if you don't correct it. That was his answer, not emotional, strategic, but underneath it, protective. The real crack came the next morning. A financial blog published a vague article. Is CEO Park's marriage strategic? No accusations, no proof, just speculation, timing, influence, investor patterns. Helen saw it first. Her fingers stilled over the screen. She wasn't afraid, but she understood something immediately. Someone was testing them, not the love, the narrative. When Sang Young read it, he did not react outwardly. But Jae soon noticed the temperature in the room drop several degrees. Trace the source, Sang Young said quietly. Yes, sir. And contain internal leaks. Yes, sir. Helen watched him carefully. Is this going to escalate? His response was calm. Yes. A pause. They're looking for weakness. And will they find it? She asked. He looked at her fully then. No. But for the first time, this was no longer just about business. This was about them. And somewhere in the shadows, Director Kim smiled. The first crack had formed. Now he would apply pressure. The second article was not vague. It was calculated. Published at exactly 6 a.m., it spread before the stock market even opened. Did CEO Park marry for business? This time, there were patterns, dates, contract negotiations, Chairman Wan's visit, the rapid wedding timeline, no proof, but enough to invite doubt. Helen read it while sitting at the dining table, sunlight spilling across polished wood. The house was quiet. She did not panic. She read every word twice. Then she closed the tablet. When Sang Young entered the room, already dressed for the day, she studied him. You've seen it, she said. Yes. His tone was controlled, too controlled. What's the damage? Minimal. For now. For now. Those 2 words lingered. Helen stood. This isn't random. No. Do you know who? A slight pause. Yes. Director Kim. He hadn't said the name yet, but she understood. The rival who had lost a major bid to Sang Young's company last year. The rival who smiled too easily at public events. The rival who would benefit from instability. At headquarters, tension was thick. Board members requested an emergency meeting. Stock prices dipped slightly. Executives whispered more openly now. Helen walked through the lobby alone. This time no one lowered their voices. She heard it clearly. Contract wife. The words were soft, but intentional. She stopped, turned, looked directly at the speaker, a senior manager, married, established, careful. "Is there something you'd like clarified?" she asked calmly. He shifted. "No, Mrs. Park." "Good." Her voice never rose, but it carried. She walked away without another word, strength without drama, and that unsettled them more. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was surgical. "Is there truth to this?" one director asked bluntly. Sang Young's hands rested on the table, steady. "My personal life has no bearing on operational performance." That wasn't the question. Silence stretched. Every eye on him. He did not lie, but he did not confess. "My marriage is legitimate," which was true. The contract existed, but so did the vows, and increasingly, so did the feelings. Director Kim watched the live financial feed from his office. Minor dip, not enough. He needed confirmation, proof. He leaned back slowly. "Dig deeper," he instructed his assistant. "Find internal documentation." Somewhere, someone would talk. Money persuades. Resentment persuades faster. That evening, Helen stood on the balcony of their penthouse, city lights shimmering below. Sang Young joined her. Neither spoke immediately. After a long moment, she asked quietly, "If this becomes worse, will you regret choosing me?" His head turned sharply. "I didn't choose you impulsively. That's not what I asked." Wind brushed her hair back from her face. For the first time since this began, vulnerability edged her voice. "If this destroys your reputation." "It won't." "And if it does?" He stepped closer. Not touching, but close enough for his presence to be undeniable. "Then it destroys it." Her breath caught slightly. He continued, voice low. "I do not abandon strategic decisions midway." She almost laughed. "You're still calling this strategy." His jaw tightened. Because he wasn't sure anymore. Not entirely. Later that night, Jae-sun entered Sang Young's office. "Sir, there's something you need to see." He placed a folder on the desk. Internal security footage logs. Access records. Someone had accessed archived legal documents tied to the marriage agreement. 2 weeks ago. Sang Young's eyes darkened. "Who?" "Mid-level compliance officer. Recently met with Director Kim's legal team." The air shifted. This was no longer speculation. It was escalation. "Secure all remaining documentation," Sang Young said quietly, "and monitor communication." "Yes, sir." A pause. "Do we inform Mrs. Park?" Sang Young looked toward the window. Lights flickered across the skyline. "No." But his hesitation was brief, because he knew something. If this exploded, she deserved to face it prepared. And somewhere in the city, Director Kim received a discreet message. Documentation may be obtainable. He smiled. Now the real game begins. It happened on a Monday. Strategic, cruel, irreversible. At 8:42 a.m., 3 major news outlets published the same headline within minutes of each other. Confidential documents suggest CEO Park's marriage began as a contract. This time, it wasn't speculation. It was a scanned page, a portion of the agreement. Blacked out clauses, visible signatures, enough to confirm the truth. Helen saw it before anyone called her. Her phone vibrated repeatedly on the kitchen counter while she prepared coffee. Notifications stacked on the screen. News alerts, messages, unknown numbers. Her fingers went still. She opened the article, and there it was. Her name, his name, the word contract in bold. She didn't flinch, but her chest tightened. Not because it was false, because it was incomplete. It told the beginning, not the evolution. Across town, Sang Young was already in the boardroom when the screen at the far end lit up with the headline. Silence. Heavy. Accusing. One director exhaled sharply. "This is a disaster." Another leaned forward. "Were we aware of this arrangement?" Sang Young's voice was calm. "Yes." Shock rippled. "You confirmed it?" "I confirmed that the marriage began as an agreement." Murmurs erupted. Stock prices began dropping more sharply now. "This compromises trust." "It looks manipulative. It looks deceptive." Sang Young did not raise his voice. "It was legal." "That's not the issue," a director snapped. "No, it wasn't legality. It was perception." Helen arrived at headquarters alone. She refused the driver, refused security assistance. If this was public, she would face it publicly. Cameras were already outside. Reporters called her name. Mrs. Park, was your marriage a business deal? Did you love him? Were you paid? The last question lingered in the air like poison. Helen stopped walking, turned, looked directly at the nearest camera. Her voice was steady. I was never purchased. Then she continued inside. No tears, no panic, just dignity. Upstairs, Sang-young watched the lobby footage replay. Her posture, her composure, her refusal to crumble. Something inside him shifted violently. He had built this structure, this strategy, and now she was standing inside the fallout because of him. Director Kim sat in his office, watching financial numbers drop. There it is, he thought. Destabilization. He didn't hate Sang-young personally, but power requires removal, and scandal is the cleanest weapon. His assistant entered. Public opinion is turning. Kim nodded. Release the second file. At 1:15 p.m., a second leak dropped. This time, a clause highlighting duration terms. It looked colder, more calculated. Social media exploded. She was temporary, gold digger, corporate puppet. Helen read none of it, but her phone kept vibrating, over and over. That evening, the penthouse felt different, no longer insulated. Sang-young entered to find Helen standing by the window. She didn't turn. It's out, she said quietly. Yes. A long silence stretched between them. Then, you should hold a press conference, she said. His eyes narrowed. Not yet. Yes, now. He stepped closer. You don't understand how volatile this is. She turned then. Finally, her eyes were clear. I understand exactly. If you stay silent, they define the narrative. If you speak, you control it. He studied her. She wasn't emotional. She was strategic, just like him. But there was something else now. Hurt, not from the exposure, from the implication. They think I was an accessory, she continued softly. A requirement. A clause. His jaw tightened. You were never a requirement. Then prove it. The words landed heavier than any accusation. For the first time since this began, he had no immediate response, because proving it meant something dangerous. It meant stepping beyond control. Later that night, alone in his office, Sang-young stared at the original contract. Clean, efficient, emotionless. It had secured a deal, it had built stability, but it had also exposed something he never calculated. Attachment. His phone lit up. Message from Jae-sun. Director Kim is preparing media interviews. Sang-young closed the folder slowly. If Kim wanted escalation, he would get it. But this time, it would not be quiet. The morning was crisp, Seoul buzzing with early traffic and the relentless hum of social media alerts. Outside the glass facade of the Park Corporation headquarters, reporters had already gathered, cameras aimed, microphones ready, questions sharp and impatient. The leak had gone viral overnight, and the public thirsted for answers. Helen stepped out of the elevator, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. She wore a tailored cream blazer over a soft silk blouse, her hair pinned elegantly, face composed but eyes sharp. She didn't need to hide. She didn't need to explain herself, yet. The world wanted a narrative. She intended to control it. Sang-young appeared behind her, dark suit immaculate, expression unreadable but tension visible in the set of his jaw. No longer the man micromanaging every movement, he now moved deliberately, calculating the optics. But something in him felt unsettled. He wasn't afraid of the press. He feared misrepresentation of Helen. The first question came from a tall journalist with a microphone thrust forward. Mrs. Park, the contract leak implies your marriage was transactional. Were you? Helen cut him off, voice steady, clipped but compelling. I was never a transaction. I am not an accessory. I am Mrs. Park by choice, not clause. That should be enough. A murmur ran through the gathered reporters. Camera shutters clicked incessantly. Another reporter pressed, Do you truly love him, or was it business? Helen's gaze flicked to Sang-young for the briefest moment. He met her eyes, silent, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Then she spoke again. Love is not a business calculation. What we have is real. What we built together, beyond any document, is ours. Sang-young finally stepped forward. His voice, calm but edged with intensity, carried effortlessly. The contract was a beginning, not a definition. We chose each other, not because it was convenient, not because it was required, but because we wanted to. That is the truth. The reporters shifted, some skeptical, others intrigued. Social media instantly lit up with clips of Helen speaking, juxtaposed with Sang-young's rare public defense. The corporate world was buzzing, CEO defending a spouse publicly, unprecedented, unexpected. Yet not everyone approved. Director Kim, in his high-rise office overlooking the city, watched live feeds. He scowled, tapping his fingers against the desk. His attempt to destabilize Sang-young had backfired. Instead of scandal, the exposure had showcased strength. Helen's composure, Sang-young's restraint, their unity. Back in the lobby, Helen turned to Sang-young. "You could have stayed silent," she said softly. "Let them control the story." He shook his head, a faint smirk touching his lips. "And let them reduce you to a clause? That isn't control, it's surrender." She studied him, expression softening. "You've changed. You don't control everything anymore." "Not everything," he admitted, voice low. "But I will protect what matters. You matter." It wasn't a confession, not yet. It was more dangerous than words. It was acknowledgement. By evening, the narrative had shifted. Social media debated, but a consensus began forming. This wasn't a business arrangement gone wrong. This was a partnership forged under unusual circumstances, now proven genuine. In the quiet of the penthouse later that night, Helen allowed herself a rare smile. Sang-young, watching her from across the room, felt something unfamiliar stir: pride, awe, desire. The contract was meaningless now. The world could see, if only partially, what he had always known. Helen was his, not by clause, but by choice. And in that quiet, their slow-burn love had quietly, irrevocably, claimed the stage. The Park Corporation penthouse was unusually quiet that afternoon, the soft hum of Seoul far below a distant reminder of the outside world. Helen sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight brushing her hair in a warm halo, a tablet balanced on her lap. She was reviewing quarterly reports, her focus sharp, but her mind kept wandering. The media storm from the contract leak hadn't fully subsided, and subtle whispers had begun circulating in the corporate corridors. Executives who once nodded respectfully now looked at her differently. Some whispered behind closed doors, their tones a mix of admiration and disbelief. Just a contract wife, yet she handled the press with such poise. Helen caught fragments of these murmurs in passing, the thinly veiled skepticism, the occasional hint of admiration. It was a delicate line to walk. She wasn't just defending herself. She was proving that she was Sang-young's equal, not a placeholder or a trophy. Meanwhile, Sang-young moved silently around the apartment, removing the last of the unopened documents from the dining table. He had let Helen handle the media exposure on her own, trusting her judgment, and yet he couldn't ignore the subtle shift in attention she now attracted. Other men, younger executives, board members, even foreign consultants, lingered just a little too long when she spoke. He didn't voice a word, didn't confront anyone. His control had shifted. He was no longer micromanaging her life, but the possessiveness simmered quietly beneath his disciplined exterior. Helen's phone buzzed. A message from a new contact, a male consultant she had briefly met during a previous investor meeting, asked her out for coffee to discuss potential collaboration. Professional, polite, and entirely business-focused, yet the implication lingered. Helen read the message, fingers hovering, contemplating the proper response. She wasn't interested, but her caution reminded her to navigate this terrain delicately. Sang-young's presence was suddenly felt behind her. "Will you be seeing him?" His tone was calm, neutral, almost too calm. Helen looked up, locking eyes with him. She had learned to read the quiet tension behind his words. "It's strictly professional," she said. "I'm managing it, Sang-young. Don't worry." He studied her, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly. "I see." That single word carried the weight of unspoken jealousy, a quiet storm restrained only by his discipline. She returned to her tablet, pretending to ignore the subtle shift in the room's energy. She could feel his eyes on her, measuring, calculating. Her pulse quickened, not with fear, but with awareness. Sang-young had always been commanding, but now, for the first time, his attention was hers alone. Not as a boss, not as a husband bound by contract, but as a man who quietly claimed her heart without saying it aloud. Evening fell, and the city lights began to sparkle below. Helen closed the tablet and leaned back, her thoughts tangled with excitement and uncertainty. The world was watching, and now she wondered, would her relationship with Sang-young survive the subtle, insidious temptations of admiration, jealousy, and the eyes of those who underestimated them both? Sang-young approached, silent as ever, and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. No words, no demands, just a reminder of presence, of possession, of a quiet devotion that no rumor could shake. Helen smiled faintly, realizing the delicate truth. Their love had begun quietly, forged in contracts and necessity, but it had grown into something no whispers, no temptations, could diminish. The gala hall shimmered under crystal chandeliers, a soft hum of conversation weaving through the space. Investors, executives, and journalists milled about, drinks in hand, the air tinged with the faint scent of expensive perfumes and polished wood. Sang-young Park stood at the edge of the room, impeccably dressed in a tailored midnight blue suit, his posture straight, eyes scanning, calculating. But tonight, his attention was fixed entirely on Helen. She moved through the crowd with effortless grace, a pale lavender gown hugging her form without trying too hard, a soft smile on her lips as she answered questions and engaged with professionals. The whispers began almost immediately, subtle at first, then rising. Is she really just a contract wife? Does he even care? Helen caught fragments of the murmurs, but did not falter. Sang-young noted the tension in the air, but there was no irritation, only determination. Tonight he would let nothing undermine what they had built. His hand found hers as she passed by, a subtle squeeze that said more than words ever could. Helen met his gaze, a spark of warmth lighting her eyes. They walked together side by side, a silent declaration, "We are equals, and nothing else matters." An investor approached, curiosity glinting in his eyes. "Helen, your insights on the new tech strategy were impressive. You're not just a figurehead, are you?" Helen smiled, calm, composed. "I've always believed in doing the work, not the image. Strategy speaks louder than titles." The investor nodded, clearly impressed, and walked away. Sang-young's jaw softened imperceptibly, pride barely hidden. No one could doubt her capabilities tonight, not even the boardroom whispers that lingered like static. Later, as the gala lights dimmed and the crowd thinned, they found a quiet balcony overlooking the city. Seoul spread beneath them, a galaxy of lights reflected in their eyes. Helen leaned against the railing, breathless from the adrenaline, from the triumph, from the sheer intensity of having fought rumors and still emerged whole. Sang-young stepped closer, voice low, almost reverent. "You handled them, all of them, and you did it without me stepping in." Helen shook her head slightly. "You didn't need to. This—" She gestured at the glittering city, the emptying hall behind them. "This is mine. I've earned it." A long, charged silence stretched between them. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, the touch light but deliberate. Helen's heart raced. She had known restraint, calculation, and control in their marriage, but this closeness, this quiet intimacy, was theirs by choice. His lips hovered near her ear as he whispered, "And yet, I've never been prouder to be seen with you." Helen's breath caught. Slowly, intentionally, she leaned into him, feeling the steady warmth of his hand at her back, the controlled strength in his frame. Their first kiss since the world started watching them was soft, deliberate, and real, not for the cameras, not for contracts, but for themselves. The city lights glimmered beneath them, the hum of the gala fading into the night. For the first time, Helen and Sang-young felt unshackled, their love unspoken yet undeniable. No whispers, no contracts, no expectations, just them, choosing each other. Even as the media lenses and rumors waited in the wings, they had claimed something far greater, their truth, their love, their partnership. And it was only the beginning. The morning sun spilled through tall windows of a serene countryside chapel, casting warm golden light across polished oak pews. White petals lined the aisle, soft and fragrant, and a quiet hush settled over the small gathering of family, friends, and select colleagues. This was no gala, no boardroom spectacle. This was theirs. Helen stood at the entrance, her lavender gown replaced by a delicate ivory dress that hugged her form with elegance, simple but unforgettable. Her hair was softly pinned, a few loose strands framing her determined, yet tender expression. She held her bouquet lightly, fingers brushing against the petals, and took a deep breath. Every heartbeat echoed her choice. I am here because I want this. Not for contracts, not for convenience. For us. The doors opened, and Sang-Young Park appeared at the altar, the morning light catching the sharp lines of his face. His navy suit was perfect, tailored, immaculately pressed, but it was his eyes that held her focus. They were softer than usual, vulnerability hidden beneath the calm power she had come to know so well. He didn't need to speak. The air between them carried all the words he couldn't say. As Helen walked down the aisle, whispers of admiration floated from the few guests, some marveling at her poise, others noting the quiet intensity of the man who walked toward her. Yet neither cared about attention, rumors, or past contracts. They only cared about each other. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice calm, steady. Today, these two individuals stand together, not because of obligation, but by choice, by love, respect, and mutual trust. Helen's eyes never left Sang-Young's. She saw the man who had once measured every interaction, calculated every move, now here, ready to meet her in equality and partnership. And Sang-Young saw the woman who had matched his strength, challenged his assumptions, and stood unwavering beside him. When the vows came, they spoke simply, intentionally. Helen's voice was firm, but soft. I promise to stand with you, not because of contracts or appearances, but because I choose you, always. Sang-Young's tone was uncharacteristically warm. I promise to protect your freedom, to honor your choices, to love you beyond all strategy, beyond all control. You are my equal, my partner, my life. Tears glistened in Helen's eyes, mirrored in his. And then, the moment came, the kiss. Soft at first, then more certain, filled with the passion and restraint of years past. Their lips met in a way that said everything. Love, born from choice. Nurtured by respect, no contracts required. Applause followed, but neither noticed. They were lost in the world they had created together. Outside, the sun rose fully, a bright promise. For once, Sang-Young Park was not the man defined by contracts or control. He was a husband, wholly and completely. Helen smiled against his chest, and he whispered, We did it, all of it, together. Yes, she replied, and it's ours. Only ours. The cameras would capture the dress, the flowers, the kiss, but the real story, the love that had started with a contract and grew into something undeniable, belonged to them alone. And as the doors closed behind them, the world could watch, speculate, and marvel. But Helen and Sang-Young knew the truth. The contract was gone, the choice was theirs, and their love was real. If you loved Helen and Sang-Young's journey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that melt your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching.